it being the beginning of the year, and many of us are thinking about intentions, resolutions, goals, changes we want to be making for the year, this is a great time to talk about how we actually do make changes and what are the changes that we're trying to make over the next year. And when we think about making changes in our lives, there's some helpful tools and tips and resources that could help us move as smoothly as possible in creating these changes. And I have 3 tips for you today and how you can more effectively bring change into your life. The first one is thinking about a change or changes that you've made in the past and how did you make those changes. So when I talk to this with clients, a lot of them are kind of thrown off because there's not often that we're asked, how do you best make change? What are the steps and the tools and the strategies you use to be able to make changes in your life? We're not asked that question and we don't think about it, and changes occur either spontaneously or haphazardly, or things may not change for us at all. But if we are intentional and thinking about how do I make changes, how have I made changes in my life, we can see a model or plan start to shape, and then we can implement that into the changes that we want to make. So to ask yourself and to reflect on what are important changes I've made in my life and how did I make those changes? A change that I made when I was in graduate school is I was initially assigned an advisor. Lovely person. However, our research was not necessarily aligned, and there was another professor in my department who our research and our values were much more aligned, and I want to work with that person. So to make that change, I had to sit with that because I didn't want there to be emotional issues. I didn't want there to be any fallout with that. And so I just had to sit with that as I was deciding the decision that I wanted to make. And then when I made the decision that I want to switch advisors, I needed to research what's the procedures for me to be able to make this change. After I found out what the method is for changing advisors, that people can change advisors, this is something that's done. I had more of a roadmap for what that process would look like. And then I talked to the professor that I actually wanted to work with and was able to take me on. And so then I also had the support from the other professor to make the switch, and then had a conversation with the current advisor that I would be making that switch, that I would be making that change to effectively be able to make this switch. And that was a really positive and instrumental change for me, and it was important in what my graduate trajectory looked like. So, all that to say though, when I think about that change and then I think about other significant changes I've made in my life, there is a process that I go about. That when there's something important to me, I need to sit with it for a minute. I need to feel the emotions behind it. I need to think about the consequences of the change that I'm going to make. And I also have to think about the consequences if I don't make that change. And then after making that change, I try to do my research. Like, what are the things I need to do? What are the steps I need to take? Having support for me is very helpful. So having that support, having those resources available to me, and then actually being able to follow through with the change. So I would encourage you to just take a moment, do some journaling, some reflection, think about 1 to 3 changes that you've made in your life and see what sort of themes or patterns are connected between these different things, the different changes that you made. And chances are you'll be able to pull some different things together that express how you can best make changes in your life. So I say this over and over and over that, yeah, we do need to develop new ways of being, but also there's things that we're already doing or have done in the past so we can re-implement those things and they can be effective for us as well. The second tip is being able to recognize how you're aware that you're making change. So, are you the type of person that change happens and then after that change is made, you see it? That there could be the goal of, I no longer want to be a people pleaser, and I feel like people are taking advantage of me, and it's hard for me to say no. So, is it 6 months later where you realize, like, oh, in all those meetings, I said no, or I expressed my opinion more, um, that I was asked to take on tasks and I didn't take those tasks on. 6 months later, I see, actually, no, I have made these changes. These things are different. I've advocated for myself in these ways. I've stood up for myself. Or that maybe it's been outside of our awareness that a change has been happening. And someone says, I appreciate you saying that in a meeting. It was good to have that different voice. Oh, I am doing something different. So we might not recognize it in the moment that we're making these changes, but it's after cumulative change has happened and after reflection, we see that we've made change. Is that how you recognize change is happening? Or are you the type of person that when you are changing, you see it in the moment? So, sticking with that people pleasing example, hey, Kimber, can you jump on a call at 7 p.m.? No, I'm not available at 7 p.m. Let's find a time that both of us is gonna that'll be better for both of us to be able to meet, more accommodating for both of us to meet. And as you are having that conversation in your brain, these light bulbs are popping off, or this applause is happening because you recognize I'm standing up for myself, I'm asserting myself, I'm making that change that I want to make. But I'm recognizing it right here in this moment that I'm being more assertive and I am advocating for myself. So you see it as the change is happening. And not either one of those are better or worse. What is important is that however we see change happening, that we're aware that the change is happening. And so if we can see it in the moment, wonderful, and we can keep that momentum for change. If it takes us being able to reflect, see back, look back on the changes that we've made to see them, making sure that we are taking that time to be reflective and look back. If it's someone else prompting us to recognize the change that we made, to be able to receive that feedback when we're getting it, but being careful and being intentional and being aware of recognizing when the changes are occurring in your life. And then the third tip is being able to determine, is the change that we're trying to make, the difference that we are trying to accomplish, is this something that is very time limited, or is this going to be something that will continue to adjust over time and that I need to be more flexible with? For example, a concrete and very specific goal is by December, I want to finish this course. Well, okay, so I need to sign up for the course. I need to take the class. I need to pass the exams. December, I made that change and I accomplished that goal that I had. It's very specific, it could be very measurable. But then some of our other goals or the changes that we want to make for ourselves, maybe they do seem more abstract. And there's going to be adjustments that come to them as we are accomplishing these different goals. Sticking with that people pleasing example, that I no longer want to be a people pleaser. And then we can look at and see, okay, at work, I'm doing a much better job in setting boundaries. I am able to say no more. I'm being more strategic in the projects that I take on. I can see that. However, in my relationships outside of work, it's so much harder for me to set boundaries, to say no, to not be available for people. I feel like I'm disappointing the people in my personal life. So, yes, I have accomplished this major change at work while I'm still going to have to continue to adjust, modify, sit with discomfort, um, continue to pursue how do I actually make these changes in these other areas of my life. And so that people pleasing is going to continue to adjust and we have to be flexible over time. But we don't want to, because I'm not able to set boundaries in my personal life, to minimize and miss these other changes that happen. And that those other changes need to happen likely for us to be able to have the resources, the strengths, the tools to be able to then start to make changes in these other parts of our lives. Okay, so with those things, I encourage you to consider how you've made changes in the past and how you can then come up with a plan for how you can be intentional in making change in the future. How you are aware that you are making the changes. Are you aware of the changes that you're making in the moment, or is it through reflection or getting feedback from other people? And then the changes that you're wanting to make, are they specific and they're going to be very measurable for you, or are these changes that will continue to adjust and evolve over time? I hope you find these tools helpful. Let us know what strategies worked for you and if there's other tips you have and how you can make change.